Hark, what is this? Sitting in front of me is 11 pounds of a shoulder of a pig, and the skin is still on it, fresh from the butcher. This huge chunk of meat cost me under $20, and it's enough meat to feed my family for a week, and it's enough food for big huge get together. It just so happens I have a little party planned, and we'll have leftovers from this. So I'm going to make this in a way that I first encountered when I was in Key West, and it's kind of weird how this happened. I went to Key West, and when I was down there, I was walking around, and I saw a laundromat, and on the laundromat there was a sign that said Cuban sandwich. And I was curious. I was like, what the heck? What kind of a place serves food in a laundromat? So I ordered one of these Cuban sandwiches, and I ate it, and it was literally a life-changing moment. It was so good. My first impressions were that there was turkey and ham on it, and I was completely blown away by it. It was tangy. And it turns out that the version of the Cuban sandwich that I ate is actually specific to Key West, in that it had lettuce and tomatoes on it and was served cold. It wasn't until later that I figured that out, and figured out that the turkey on my particular Cuban sandwich was actually Cuban roast pork. So I spent a couple years, talking to different friends that are Cuban and learning from different people, because I'm American. I can't go to Cuba and see it for myself. So I kind of did some research and came up with my own method of making Cuban roast pork. And I'm going to show that today. This obviously is not authentic, and I'll get to a few reasons why. And this is just my version of it. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I'm combining a couple different ways of cooking pork to kind of come up with my own little version of Cuban roast pork. So the first thing you have to do, I leave the skin on, is take a knife, and this is actually perfect for the task. It's nice and thick, and it's not going to break. This is made by my friend T.M. Hunt, and you can Google him. You don't have to have this knife, but anyway, I thought I'd give him a plug. And what you want to do is just stab the crap out of this thing, and it's brutal, and just go all Genghis Khan on it and stuff, because what these stabs are going to do is let you work in salt and marinade deep into this pork, and that's one of the first steps, is just aerating this sucker, getting it good and stabbed up, and then at the end of all this stabbing, I'll show you the next step. So now that we've gone all crazy on our pork here, stabbed it full of all kinds of holes, I'm taking some kosher salt. You don't have to have this, just whatever salt you have, and I'm going to rub it into, and push it down in these holes, and just rub this pork down real well with salt. Probably overall there's going to be, I don't know, a couple tablespoons of salt on this stuff when I get done salting it. And funny story about this Cuban pork, it's been a while since I've made this. My other Boston Terrier, Daisy, she died last summer, and I haven't made it since then. But whenever I used to make this, Daisy would just sit there and her mouth would just water, and she would greatly look forward to this stuff. And she basically would spend a day and a half or even more just sitting there with her mouth watering, anticipating some of this delicious roast pork. And anyway, the reason it's such a long process is because I do this a little bit differently than some people do. The first thing I do is I put this on the grill, and I get the coals super hot, get a big coal fire going, and I sear this on all the sides to kind of lock in juices and all those sorts of things. And then the rest of the cooking process, what I want to happen is I want all the collagen and all the other good tasty things in this meat to kind of render off and tender up. So how I do that is with after I've put it on the grill, I put it in the oven overnight at 200 degrees. So you can imagine that your whole house at the end of that just smells fantastic. But the entire time that's cooking, the only thing your dog can think about is how tasty that pork is going to be. We'll see if my new Boston Terrier reacts the same way. Now it's time to make the marinade. I'm told that this is a mojo sauce, and that's spelled M-O-J-O. And I make this version with a half a cup of olive oil. And this is supposed to have originated in the Canary Islands, and there's supposed to be like a red kind and a green kind. But it's pretty popular in Cuba, I'm told, having never been there. And about a teaspoon of black pepper. And you want to put oregano in there, and you can use dried oregano. I just happen to have some fresh. I'm going to put about that much in there. And a whole bunch of garlic. This is like a whole head and a half of garlic that I've peeled. And I've got a couple bay leaves that I'm going to use. And some cumin seed. You want about, I'd say that's about a teaspoon of the cumin seed. You can use ground cumin, doesn't matter. And the final ingredient, if I were actually able to get them, this would be 2 cups of bitter orange juice. Now, bitter orange is, I think the Seville orange is another name of it or something like that. But it's an orange that is a little bit more sour than it is sweet. And you'll see them growing wild in places in Florida and also in the Bahamas and other parts of the Caribbean, but I can't get any of that, so obviously this isn't authentic. Now the next step will be to blend this until it's absolutely smooth, and some of this is going to be put on the pork and some of it is going to be reserved back. I've got my mojo sauce all blended up, and the next step is to massage this stuff into the meat real well, push it down in all those little murder wounds that I made earlier, and get this thing just so it's just swimming in this stuff, and it'll be extra tasty when we get done. Now I should tell you that if you're like me and you can't get bitter orange, the next thing you could try is like lime juice or lemon juice or some sort of a citrus that is more sour than it is sweet. And what I use today is actually key lime juice, because the grocery store had a bag of key limes, and I thought, hey, why not use some of that? And if you can get whatever you can get that's cheap and readily available, will probably work. Now we've got our pork rubbed down, and I'm going to cover this with aluminum foil, and I'm going to let this sit overnight in the fridge. Actually, it's cold enough out that I'm just going to put this on my porch and let this marinate overnight. And with the leftover marinade there, I'm going to save that, because when we go to actually cook this, I'm going to be brushing that on, and there'll probably still be some left that I can use for other nefarious purposes. So after this is done, we'll go to the next step. I've got my oven preheated to 225. I may have said 200 earlier, and this is that leftover mojo sauce that I'm just going to kind of squirt over the top here. Every so often during the cooking I'll do this, and this wonderful porky goodness is going to go into the oven here at 225 overnight. Our total cooking time in the
225 is probably going to be on the order of 12-13 hours depending, and then I'll check. What I'm looking for here is for this to be pulled apart by forks with no problem. Uh-oh. Somebody has made an appearance. Apparently she is interested in the pork like her forebears were. You want some of that pork? Here's what it looks like when it's done. You can see that it's shrunk down quite a bit and kind of flattened out. That's because the connective tissue is rendered off, and there's a lot more liquid in the pot, and that is mostly fat because again the fat has rendered away. So now I'm going to take it out of there, let it cool down, and shred it. Well, the pork seems to be having a similar effect on Nellie. She was pretty restless last night when this was cooking. Okay, so I'm all done with my pork. This is the pork. I've pulled it, and you can see it's got this kind of shredded texture. And then this is the leftover stuff, bones and fat. You can use that for something else. It's not necessarily waste, but that's an enormous amount of meat to get for under $20. And so there are, I should mention, other ways to make this. If you want, you can take and roast your pork shoulder to a specific temperature like 170 or 180 and then cool it down. And after you cool it down, you can slice it so it'll end up like deli meat instead of like the shredded texture. It's the slow, low cooking that gives you this texture, and I like this because of using it for Cuban sandwiches, and you can use it in burritos and all sorts of other tasty, delicious things that you can't always use the thinly sliced deli style meat. So that's it. Serving suggestions: make a Cuban sandwich. Someday I'll make a video on how to do that. You serve this with some yellow rice and black beans and you're good to go. Maybe a little hot sauce. And that's it.